Good evening and welcome back. Attainment gap between black students and their white peers at university is, quote, too high, higher education watchdog warns. And first thing, I love the fallout from quotas, which of course aren't official and they're not law and they're definitely not happening, but you can all read between the lines. But this, to me, I think is the nicer way to take it, which is an unintended consequence of a seemingly virtuous ideal that, as far as they would say, it's like, well, seeing as BAME people, or blacks, if we're focusing on blacks here, you don't want to throw Asians in. that would kind of go counter to the point if Asian is East Asian instead of Middle East Asian. But it's to say, well, they should be having more opportunities because they don't have enough opportunities. And if they had the same opportunities as white folk, then they'd be doing just as well. Okay, right. So you're saying it's more opportunities, and how are you going to provide more opportunities? So, well, forcing them into a place and giving them positions they haven't earned. Okay, not quite seeing that as equal opportunity, but I'll go on with it. So what happens next? Now that they've got the same access to the same resources, the same lecturers, the same materials, reading lists and all that, what then is the outcome? So, there's still a gross discrepancy here. Okay, so it seems to me to be the case that you've fobbed off people that could have actually earned a higher qualification for the sake of people who can't keep up. Is that perhaps why you're seeing too many people dropping out as well from these minority ethnic backgrounds? It doesn't quite seem to be having the intended effect. So, okay, so the solution, should you wish to have it, is very straightforward. The best predictor of how well somebody's going to do in life is if their parents are together for their childhood. And then, of course, onto adulthood as well isn't quite so important. But to be growing up, at least in the early years, the formative years, with two parents is a fantastic predictor of how what they're going to do. Now, I doubt I need to remind you about the horrific issue of fatherlessness in the black community, or amongst black people. And that, I believe, is the biggest issue that they're facing here. But, of course, nobody wishes to address that, because then that would lead people to insinuate that perhaps men have a positive use, and maybe they're also useful for children, that we all know that is supposed to be just entirely down to the mother, and the mother is solely responsible for the child doing well, whereas the father is just an abusive nuisance getting in the way of what would otherwise be a peaceful existence. And therefore they're trying to avoid that. So instead of that, they offer no solutions at all. Nothing concrete, except to try and say, yeah, just focus more on them. Give them extra attention. Like, sure, Damascus lived in terms of equal opportunities. We tried to pass it off to say they should get as many university places as other ethnic groups. But seeing as we are just drawing this all down on race and making race the most important thing, now we're going to say that they need extra attention. It seems to be we're one or two steps away from just saying, just give them a better grade. It's like, sure, you can't actually have their ethnicity on the report or on their exam, but if you're marking as their lecturer, then you know who they are. Just, bump up the grade, or if it's a name thing and it seems like more of an ethnic name, then, just bump up the grade. That seems to be where we're going. Because what is it that got to this point? Well, the Office for Students found 68.2% of black students gained a first or 2-1. In the same time period, 2019-2020, 86.6% of white students got top degrees. And there is obviously a very notable point, should you wish to take it this way, which is to say, if everybody's given the same opportunities, and they're coming from the same place, and you're delineating based on just one particular characteristic, and that is the key thing that differentiates people, and you're saying that that's what creates the difference, then their study of and within itself is to try and say, it seems that the black people aren't as smart as white people. I'm not trying to go there. I'm trying to offer other explanations. But seeing as all the other explanations seem to be shot down by them, what is the other option? I'm really not seeing it. Because the more that they push this, and of course try to get rid of reasonable reasons to say that, maybe there are things that we can change, whether that be kind of culture that is imported and embodies adulthood or young adulthood in black communities, or if it is the lack of male role models or the lack of fathers, whatever it might be there. If they dismiss all that, then eventually you just get down to, okay, so what is it? If this particular ethnic group isn't doing as well as this particular other ethnic group, what is it? If we're not saying it's a lack of work ethic, which is of course particularly prevalent amongst East Asians and Ashkenazi Jews, if it's not the fact that parents being together is a good predictor, if it's not the fact that what is idealized in terms of male role models differs from being doctors and lawyers in some cultures to gang members in other cultures, then what could it be? Because it seems like you're only leaving one option. And they might cry as they wish to try and avoid this, but I really don't see what else it could possibly be. Because we've already thrown out all the other bullshit about saying, oh, they're being treated unfairly and they're being pushed down, because clearly they're not. If they're being given all the same opportunities, then it seems to be there was something more integral. So you can either go to environment, or you can go to genetics. You can either go to nurture, or you can go to nature. And if all the nurture debates are being dismissed, then all that's left is nature. And I think that is always worth remembering, that if someone is trying to pull something out to say there is a difference between ethnic groups or sexes or sexual preference, and then you try and say, okay, well, it could be these environmental factors, it could be nurture, and all of them are dismissed, then all that's left is nature. So, sure, the victimhood narrative might earn you some credence, but if you overplay your hand through the victimhood narrative, then you're just left being inferior in whatever aspect you wish to dictate. So if you're saying academic performance and just missing all the nurture, then you're left holding the bag to say black people are intellectually inferior, which I'm sure is supposed to go on counter to what they're trying to get. But once they've gotten all that they've asked for and more, and yet are still demanding more, that is the only logical conclusion. But please do let me know what other option there could be which would actually be accepted, because I'm not seeing it. Of course, the one other option is just to ignore facts and reality and any semblance of truth whatsoever, and to just try and blame some non-existent, incoherent boogeyman about all the negative things that are befalling people. And instead of trying to say, maybe you could take some personal responsibility and deal with it yourself, just to say, oh, it's all down to those bad people over there, in order to try and say, but I am your saviour. Yes, it is cult-like behaviour. But surely, at some point, that's going to fall away. That's not going to work. That's not going to last. Because if, for so long, you keep saying, I will save you from those evil people, and you don't, whereas on the other side, people are saying, life might suck, but you've got the power to do something about it, and then they do, then, hey, the results speak for themselves. And you can see that, politically speaking then, between the right and the left, if you go to someone that is more conservative, more right-wing, more freedom-loving, then you're going to find people who take personal responsibility and attain much higher than what are becoming, I suppose, places like Detroit in the US. And it seems like New York City is going to become the new Detroit. That seems to be the way that it is going. They're blowing through all the wealth that they've accrued, and they're fucking off all the rich people that would have been able to pay for the exorbitant lifestyles that wish to be maintained. And if those same policies, those same words, those same actions keep resulting in the same, then you've got the definition of insanity. Of doing the same thing again and again, expecting a different result. Meanwhile, of course, for any freedom-loving individual that's take personal responsibility for their life and succeeds, which of course why Texas is now seeming so popular, then the results are what's going to sway minds. It really is. And just as a passing note for my little prediction for the future, with that in mind, seeing as America used to be land of the free and home of the brave, used to be the place that people fed up with the crown would go and try and escape and start a new life in a new world, and yet these days there isn't a new world to go enjoy your freedoms and get away from bureaucracy and tyranny. Maybe it's quite literally a new world in Mars. So I'm looking at it now that I firmly believe that Mars will be the new America. Given that it's going to be people who are fed up with how things are here, and they are actually those risk takers and are self-reliant. And of course, given that you got 8-minute delay because it's 8 light minutes away for any communications to take place, then it's going to be just like the ships of old. You're not going to be able to have any fun conversations at all. There's going to be a lot of lag. It's all going to have to be messages. It's going to be similar to sending post. So that's the way I see it. And so the cycle continues. But that's it for me. So let me know what you guys think down below. What could actually be done in terms of trying to shrink this attainment gap, if anything? Because, as we all know, it doesn't really matter. But all the time they're making news about it, I am more than happy to grab them in their own terms. But let me know down below. Always intrigued to hear what you guys have to say. And as always, until next time, have a good one.